Hey gang, we made it to questions and coffee number 3. I'm so psyched. Someone actually watched this. Thank you. This is fun, and I've wanted to have a way to talk to you guys, and I could never figure it out, and I thought, well, no one's gonna watch a video unless it's got a rack preamp that no one else can buy because only 3 of them were made. But I really appreciate you guys spending your time with me. Thank you. Let's get into some questions and coffee. Today's coffee is brought to you by Pete's Coffee. It's a half-calf Americano. Let's just kick it off with the quote of the week. We are talking about the matchless GPR-1 preamp. Hey, I could reflect my nuts and get some sick tones at the same time. Now that's what I'm talking about. It's a twofer. I love how you hate the tube screamer, yet every note you played sounded better with it on. Yeah, that's the 5 pedals I just don't get. So I went in thinking these are 5 pedals that just don't work for me. And I was going to show how they don't work for me, even though they're famous pedals. Turns out that day, every one of those 5 pedals sounded better on than off. Everything I did to them. It's like I couldn't lose that day. Why didn't that happen every other time I've tried them? I don't know. So now I have to keep all 5 pedals because now they might really come in handy. Before I was ready to, make some bucks on the eBay, but not anymore. I'll keep them. Craig Kniz, your life is not complete, nor has your channel reached its full potential until you obtain and do a video on the Diesel VH4. Oh, Craig, I had a Diesel VH4 for many years. I used it so much that I kind of got bored with it. I didn't have a ton of amps. It was before I went into the preamp crazy too. So every time I turned it on, it was the Diesel. So I sold it and I got my custom Friedman BE100, which I love. And I haven't ever regretted selling it and doing the swap, but I do miss having a VH4. I tried getting the pedal, thinking like, that'll do it. But that was solid state. It's not the VH4. So I've been thinking about maybe going into the Synergy. But I don't know. I felt like part of that VH4's mojo came from the power amp. Now, a friend of mine just got the new Diesel Super Future head. And I'm hoping I could get over there and check it out. COVID's weird, but guitar amps. MBG Mail asks, if you were to compare the preamp plus power amp to a head on the cool scale, it's like an office copy machine compared to a charger. That comes down to perspective, right? For me, I think the coolest thing in the world is seeing a dude with a 48 space rack behind him and a couple heads. I mean, that's when it gets really cool, when you're like rack, heads, cabs. But if it came down to like a half stack or a rack, I'm really like rack dude. I would love to see the racks come back. Pedro asks, hey Michael, I'm curious about the return of rack preamp stuff. Do you feel that preamps lack some of the dynamics that all-in-one amps have? Do you lose anything by having them separate? Yes and no. It's tricky sometimes to find that sweet spot. And there are preamps that are really hard to find that sweet spot. For me, the Bogner Fish is one of the hardest to consistently find the sweet spot in. I love that preamp. I have a real soft spot for it. It was one of the holy grail pieces. I don't feel like the Soldano X88R has such a hard time finding a sweet spot for the 3 channels to interact and where it feels like an amp. But what you got going is, on a regular amp, you have your gain and your master volume, and you're like good to go. Everything else is dialed in for you. You get some wizard, and they're like, I've got to figure it out. But with the preamps, you have a gain and master volume going into another amp with a master volume. So that disconnect there is where a lot of the problem happens. If you're too quiet going into the power amp, it can sound just boring and lifeless. If you're too hard, your clean channel might sound like a plexi, a raging plexi. I do think if you put 10 people in a room, odds are most people will quickly dial in a good sound on the head and might have some trouble on the preamp, power amp setup. It's part of the fun is finding how to unlock these things, you know. It's either that or practice. And, you know, I'm always looking for an excuse not to practice. I hate to say it. Sorry, guys. Pheasant plucker. If you were to record with a preamp directly into a desk or interface with an IR, would you still run it through a power amp? Not necessarily. So I use the 2 notes, Cab M, which I think is fantastic. It has power amp simulation in it that's very good. It's warm and not overbearing. So I could plug a preamp directly into the Cab M. I don't even need the power amp sim if you don't want to, but you put that on and I quite like the sound. Now, if I do want to bring in the power amp, like the Mesa 290 has all these EQ contours, or if I want the sound of the 2150 involved, then I will take from the preamp to the power amp into the Fryette power station, and we'll just load that down, and then it goes into the box, and I use the 2 notes Wall of Sound Torpedo software as my front end. You know. Thoughts on rectifiers? I'd love to see you thrash on a Rev F or G2 channel. I had one way back in the day before everyone was like, which Rev are you using? This was way before. Look, I've owned 3 dual rectifiers. Only one of them was the 2 channel. The others were 3 channels. They're amazing. Great amp. But once I started working commercially or doing commercials, trailers, whatever, when I would plug into a dual rectifier, I could play anything and it would sort of sound like rawr. That dual rectifier, like overly aggressive thing. And the tracks that I would do with the dual rectifier would always either get rejected or like, it feels too heavy or dark or something. And so once I got rid of that and started using Diesel or Marshall, and then now I'm on Friedman stuff, that problem didn't happen anymore. There are several amps that have come through here that I try, and every time it gets rejected. Every time. I don't know if it's like the cursed amp or it's just me plus that amp doesn't work. But yeah, I want a dual rectifier. I need to get one, and that is in our future, gang. Pretty pictures! Ow! All right, the first picture I'm going to share with you is this. Alan Meyerson, one of the top scoring mixers with 6 Bricasti M7s. I'm just going to leave that here for a second. This one came off of Instagram. Oh, it's so gorgeous. Oh my gosh. Oh. So there's a custom audio electronics 3+ preamp in there. Eventide, a couple Lexicons, the TC12, 2290, that's it, and a Tyler. What do you guys think about the Tyler headstock? It never bothered me, and then I started reading online forums many years ago that everyone hates the headstock. Not everyone. There's complainers that hate the headstock. But shoot, in that sparkly pink too, that is just on fire. I would love to see the rest of that. This one kind of blew me away. This Sir, I don't usually go in for like the mega top anymore. There was a time in my life that was the dream. Now, not so much. But holy crud, that's an incredible piece of wood and a gorgeous finish on there. Oh, wow. Wowzers. I went to Guitar Center to do a return, and I was kind of shocked at what I found. I walk into the Sherman Oaks Guitar Center, and I see this. One is, it was chock full of guitars, so that was nice. There were some nice guitars. Did not see a lot of like $100 guitars. There was $500 to $2,000 guitars everywhere, and every guitar looked awesome. Like this one. Look at this one right here. Oh my gosh, a little Esquire action in Seafoam. Got some sweet Ibanez's. Poke your eyes out red. Yeah. But what kind of blew me away is there were no amps. Look at the amps they have. They have like little couple dinkers. That was it. Even in the live room, there was one 51-50 head, and I think that was it. Does no one buy amps? Is it all guitars and software? What a bummer. Software is great, but dude, after a while, you gotta reset your head with the amp. Otherwise, what are we doing here, guys? And gals, ladies, you could fix this. I mean, who am I kidding? There's like one girl that's ever watched my show. Appreciate you guys watching. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching this one. I got some cool stuff coming up this week, and we'll talk to you soon.